unstable. I feel able to turn the tables. I could do this. Just keep moving, keep your hands up, stupid. I feel lucid, a new viewing. I can see the end, I can see my future, I can view it. It's right there for the taking. Everything I've ever wanted, dreams are just waiting. I just gotta fight for it, willing to die for it, willing to like soreness.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000, it still sucks. This is Philip J. Price, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the DT Show. Hope everybody had a safe Labor Day weekend. Everybody's doing okay. Hope nobody got too crazy. I know I didn't. Well, actually, me and the wife kind of did. We went out to SeaWorld, and we ended up getting involved into a pretty severe storm. I mean, it wasn't bad. It was just raining pretty hard. But we were out there 2 days in a row, and it rained both days. It was pretty crazy, but we had a good time. It was a lot of fun, so that was probably the craziest thing we did. Hope everybody who was out there didn't get too crazy. Today, we're going to go back into the Jack and Lilly Sullivan disappearance. I have the documents. Guys, from our was it RCMP? RCMP. Sorry about that, guys. I'm all over the place tonight. I have the documents, and guys, I mean, there's one thing that I used to talk about in the Brian Koberger case. I would talk about certain things like, all right, well, if law enforcement did this or that usually means this is what's going on and this is what happened. And I started to do that. And when I did that in that case, let me go back still. When I did that in that case, I had a lot of people who were pro-burgers. They were thought that Brian Koberger was innocent. They would go against me and say all these things and say I didn't know what I was talking about. And so when those things came out to be true, obviously it wasn't because I knew what I was talking about, since that's what they were saying. It had to be because I was psychic. And so that's when I came up with the term Psychic Daniel. And it seems like it might be turning Psychic Daniel might be turning his head up again in this case. A lot of the things that I said, based on the information that I was getting, seem to be accurate about the investigation and what the means and the outcome of that investigation are. Without further ado, let's get into these documents. And we're going to jump around a little bit just so that it makes sense, because it's not in order. And I want to kind of put it a little bit in order, so to speak. And so, but before we start, I just also want to let everybody know, let's keep it civil. I know not everybody agrees with certain things. I know that there's certain people that think Daniel may have been involved. There's certain folks that think that Maleyha may have been involved. Certain folks that think both. Certain folks that think neither. You have a right to your opinion, but these documents are pretty clear and obvious. So let's start it off. This talks about the person that's writing this document is Jordan Curl, member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, with the Northeast Nova Major Crime Unit, and applying for an order authorizing a police officer to obtain access to copies of records indicated below, in accordance with Section 6 of the Missing Persons Act, which are required for the investigation being conducted by RCMP Northeast Nova Major Crime Unit into the whereabouts of the missing persons, Jack and Lilly Sullivan, missing persons. And I think that so far it's this is a pretty big hint, right? Missing persons. This isn't a criminal investigation yet. I know some people are saying, hey, not everything is back at the time of this document. It was being released in July, so maybe there's something there now. There could be DNA on the blanket or something. Well, we'll see when that happens. But as of this document, it's a missing person, so it's not anything criminal. Should kind of give us an idea or a hint of what it is that law enforcement is thinking happened here. They've mentioned things like no abduction, no criminal offense. That should kind of say a lot, to be honest with you. All right, let's continue. It says, identifying information about a missing person's names, Lilly Sullivan and Jack Sullivan, minors. It says, video records. So records required. They required video records, including closed circuit television footage of cameras at the Quoqued, I forgot how to pronounce that, Quoqued Pass, showing vehicles drivers leaving Nova Scotia from May 1st at 2:25 p.m. to May 3rd at 3 a.m. And this is the time that they were suspicious about, maybe perhaps if something would have happened. The last proof of life that they have is video surveillance of the kids at 2:25 on May 1st. Goes on to say that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police is conducting an ongoing investigation into the whereabouts of the missing persons, Lilly and Jack Sullivan, who were reported missing on May 2nd, 2025 at 10:01 a.m. by their mother, Maleyha Brooks Murray. Maleyha reported Lilly and Jack left the house, and a lot of this is redacted. And one of the things that I said was probably going to be redacted are things that are personal and unfounded, things that maybe perhaps there's a disagreement on. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's some kind of nefariousness, right? Like, for instance, we're going to hear that Maleyha says something about 10 as far as when she thinks that she put the kids to bed. Daniel says, I think it's about 10:30. You know, these guys have been separated for a long time. They probably weren't looking exactly at their phones when this stuff happened. So they're not going to be 100% accurate with each other because of those things. And it's actually something very favorable for law enforcement. That's a dream. I mean, I keep talking about how the situation here with Daniel Martell and Maleyha is a perfect situation for law enforcement. You want to separate them. You don't want them talking. You don't want them getting their story straight. You want them to turn on each other. You want them to blame each other. And when those things start to happen, you know, if there's a crime that occurred, it's relatively easy for the details of those crimes to start to surface up to the top. It's not something that it takes a Sherlock Holmes of a detective to figure out and or to accomplish. It's a very simple process that almost, I think, any detective probably could have handled. I mean, again, we're looking at, you know, some country folks. These aren't, you know, I'm not sure about Daniel's education or things of that nature, but I don't know if he went and, you know, has a degree in IT or any of those things. You know, so you got to also understand who it is you're talking with and those type of things. So I digress. All right. This continues to say, oh, that's where I was going with this. So when I said that, like, for instance, Daniel even told me in the documents that there are some things that are blacked out of what he was saying about what he thought that maybe perhaps Maleyha may have done, because he has his reasons to believe that Maleyha may have had something to do with the disappearance. You know, he goes into the no emotional, how she was non-emotional and how she left and a bunch of other things that made him suspicious of her. Nothing that's really concrete or anything like that, just more of a suspicion and speculation. But you know, he's got his reasons there and he's explained those to law enforcement. And one of the things that I noticed in these documents is that what is blanked out is, like I said before, things that are going to be private and unfounded. And I called that beforehand. So Psychic Daniel won for that one. All right. It goes on to say that Jack and Lilly were last seen on video surveillance in public at their local Dollarama on May 1st, 2025. Maleyha later reported to police that she thought Cody Sullivan, Lilly and Jack's biological father, might have picked them up and taken them to New Brunswick. Police attended Cody Sullivan's residence on May 3rd at around 2:50 a.m. and spoke with him in person. He denied knowing where the children were and picked them up. He later provided formal statements detailing he did not see them in 2 to 3 years. And so we're going to go into a little bit. Like I said, we're going to jump around. We're going to look into the beginning aspects, the call. Then we're going to look into what it is that law enforcement actually did. All right. And then we're going to go into the statements. And then at the end, we're going to, they talk about what they feel about as far as are the parents involved. And so we got all those things to break down. All right. So the first thing says here, it says on May 2nd, 2025, 6-year-old Lilly Sullivan and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan were reported missing from their house at 1407 Gairloch Road in Lansdowne, NS, Nova Scotia. Lilly was last seen with her mother, Maleyha, and her stepfather, Daniel Martell, that morning sometime. Man, this is blacked out. Again, I'm assuming this is probably because, again, these guys aren't on speaking terms, and so they may not be 100% accurate when it comes to the time. He might say, oh, I heard him at 9 o'clock, and she says, I heard him at 9:10. Well, it's not exactly the same, so they're not going to allow us to see it. So ideally, that's what this is. And it goes on to say, blank, when she came into their bedroom, Jack had not been seen since the night before, but Maleyha and Daniel had heard him playing in the house that morning during the same time frame. So I think that what this probably means is that there's might be Maleyha may not remember seeing Lilly come in, and Daniel does, and that's why it's blacked out, because it's not something that is agreed upon both. But both of them say they heard him play. They heard they heard Jack playing around the same time frame, and that's not blacked out. So it's just a process of deduction there. An extensive search involved a ground search and rescue, air support, and underwater searches were conducted between May 5th and May 9th, 2025, and again between May 17th and 19th, 2025, but were unsuccessful. And so these are some of the things that they took from Daniel and Maleyha. They took their cell phone and they got their cell phone records. They have been reviewed and are awaiting. So the results have been received and they're waiting. They've been reviewed and are awaiting further analysis by an analysis. The other thing was the school bus surveillance for the area of Gairloch Road. Results have been received. A review is in process of those as well. And then something else is blacked out. And this is probably, it's just the delayed disclosure only, but it's most likely something to do with somebody that's somebody else that they don't believe is involved. But, you know, they identify a lot of other people, you know, during this document. It's, you know, they talk to neighbors and their name aren't redacted. So I'm not sure why this is redacted, but for the records access order of something redacted, and it says the results have been received from redacted and results have not yet been received from redacted. So this sounds like maybe perhaps records for two people, and from when it was received and when it wasn't. Who those two people are, I'm not sure. And then he goes, the results have been received and are in the process of being reviewed by analysis. So there you go. Why do the cops want you to turn against your spouse? That's crazy. Well, that's if you think that they did something nefarious, Darlene. It's not that they just want to turn you against your spouse. They want to know if something nefarious occurred. And if they're, you know, these, like I've said it before, if something happened nefarious here, Janie, Daniel, and Maleyha would have had to have been involved, because each one of each other corroborate some part of their story that morning. Daniel said he saw Lilly and heard Jack. Maleyha said she heard Jack, and Janie heard the kids outside playing on the swing. And so, you know, you can't say like, oh, well, if Daniel did something and he kept that hidden from the other two, well, the other two heard something, you know, they heard the kids playing. And so they would have had to be involved. So either they're all involved because they cooperated with each other, or it's less likely that none of them are involved. And so when they go into this, they're probably thinking that there's something there. I mean, you know, the early red flags that they were there. The kids didn't go to school for a couple of days. It's not like they got the video surveillance that day from the Dollarama. It took some time for that video surveillance to come in. You know what I'm saying? And so early on, and based on what Daniel says in the statement, I believe they were pressing him pretty hard, you know, especially early on. It sounds like they were pressing him pretty good. And, you know, obviously they're probably suspect number 1 and 2. They don't find the kids in the woods. You know what I mean? They didn't go to school for a couple of days. They don't know about that video for at least a few days. So law enforcement's probably 2 feet up their rear ends trying to, you know, watching them and making sure and see if anything happens. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, they're going to try to get those folks to turn on each other. Husband, wife, doesn't matter. If they're suspects, they're going to try to get them to flip. All right. And in this scenario here, it's a perfect dream scenario to have your suspects. And it doesn't have to be husband and wife. It could be, just random burglars that break into houses together, or it could be friends. It could be brothers, sisters. It doesn't have to be husband and wife. If you have multiple suspects that were involved in a crime, you want to separate them, silence them from each other. And then you also want to turn them on each other, get them to talk against each other. And that's what they did here. I mean, I don't think they purposefully did. I don't think law enforcement went in there and had to do anything. It sounds like, to me at least, it sounds like Maleyha may have been complaining about Daniel for some time. I don't think she liked the living situation that she had, to be 110% honest with you. And I think she wanted out. I think she was possibly even going to leave Daniel at some point, or at least was contemplating that. And I think that there's a good possibility that she spoke to her family about certain things, maybe stretched the truth on certain things, just as she could be justified in leaving another situation, another broken home, another kids without their father, and another kid, Meadow, without her father, like her two older kids. And if that's the venture you're going to go in, and that's the route you're going, I can see how a person could start to say certain things just so they can lessen that conversation that family would probably have, like, hey, I mean, everybody's going to want to help out their kid and talk and things of that nature. And so it just kind of seemed like that may have been what was going on. Like she was contemplating. I don't know if she was certain that she was going to leave. I don't know those things. But it sounds like, based on my conversation with some people that are very close to this, that may have been the case. And, so you want to turn them on each other, and you want to get as much information as possible. And if law enforcement can't find anything with that, and all the, all the evidence or all the cooperation that they had, I struggle that they did something and was still cooperative to this extent and still got away with it. It would be, it's beyond me on that one. All right, let's continue. And so some of this stuff talks about the police officers who were involved, those type of things. And so it says here, grounds for belief. On May 2nd, 2025, the Pictou County RCMP were dispatched to report of a missing children in Lansdowne, Nova Scotia. Maleyha reported her children, Jack and Lily, have left the residence and were missing. She said that they were both possibly autistic and were known to wander. She does change that a little bit back and forth, whether or not they were wandering or not, or were known to wander or not. I think in the end, I think what she was trying to say is in certain situations, they were known to wander. In others, not so much. And I don't think she believed that they would be wandering by themselves. She said their boots were gone. Maleyha reported them missing at 10:01 a.m. and dispatch information reported police arrived at 10:27 a.m. Okay, and so we're going to skip this part here. Now we're going to go to, before we go into the statements, we're going to go into what it is that law enforcement did. So on May 2nd and May 14th, statements were obtained by Brian Ward, Lily and Jack's school bus driver. Lily and Jack were at the school on Tuesday when stepfather Daniel took them off of the school bus at 2:42 p.m. There was no school on Wednesday, and they were not at school on Thursday and Friday. It was normal routine for Maleyha or Daniel to take the kids off the bus because Jack was buckled in and they needed to unbuckle, and drivers were not allowed to do it. And so they talked to him. He had some surveillance and video. He was able to pull his surveillance and video from that morning for that area. He found out about Lily and Jack were missing from his daughters and went to go help in the search on Friday and over the weekend. Then they spoke with Nancy Gallant, Jack and Lily's teacher. She basically said that she'd never met Maleyha, but that when she did speak with her, she was polite in conversation. So I'm assuming this was like over email and phone call. She goes on, Nancy's, to say that they, meaning Lily and Jack, were both marked absent by Maleyha but on Thursday and Friday, the week they were missing because of an illness. So it was because they both were feeling sick. And this is going to be a common thing. I know that some folks were kind of pointing out that at certain points we were finding out that it was, or the media may have reported it was one. Well, media reported something that was inaccurate. According to the documents, in several situations, whether or in all conversations, and according to the school there, it was both. Both were sick. So take that for what it is. It goes on to say, May 5th, they took a statement from Patty Pearson, Maleyha's grandmother. Patty said that she saw them when they all came to visit. She was not sure of the date, but it was early in the week, 1 or 2 weeks before. They came over. Daniel stayed in the car, and Maleyha did laundry. To do laundry is a significant amount of time, right? It's not something that you go in, hop something in the washer. 10 minutes later, it's in the dryer. 5 minutes after that, you're on your way. Nah, you're there for a good minute doing the washing and the drying, and you're also there with family, so this is going to take a while. Daniel was there, and he was in the car. Now, what some people might look at that in a couple of different ways. What I think about that is that there was some real hostility there between Daniel and Maleyha's family already, which doesn't, when the kids go missing, it only makes sense that they're going to start to blame each other as well. And that's what's happened. But you can see that even before, there appears to be some pretty bad hostility there. All right, so let's continue. Patty says she spoke with Maleyha almost every day. On the 8th, they spoke with Ron McKenzie. This is Janie's brother. He said the following, that Ron spoke with his sister at 8:48 a.m. to see if she wanted to go to town with him. Said Janie said no. He said he called Janie again at 10:19 a.m. and she told him Jack and Lily were missing. He went to Janie's place for a few minutes. After that, they went to a neighbor's to tell them what was going on. He went to town with his mother after that and came back around 1:30 p.m. He got word he could go into the woods when he came back, so he searched for a while. All right, so then it goes on to talk to Edmund Dixon, who saw Daniel, Maleyha, and the kids at the Dollarama on May 1st, 2025. And so it says here that Ed Dixon said he worked with Daniel at the mill, I'm assuming, and saw him at the Dollarama parking lot between 11:30 and 12:30 a.m. on May 1st. Well, they should have put 11:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. because it makes it seem kind of weird. But I'm assuming it's 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. On May 1st. They had conversated for about 5 minutes and discussed enjoying their time off. He saw Daniel's girlfriend and their baby. He saw other people inside the vehicle and heard children's voices, but did not see who they actually was in the back seat. So this is when they're trying to corroborate, their testimony as far as what Daniel and Maleyha said that they had been doing leading up to that time frame. Because remember, all they knew at this point was the kids didn't go to school because they were sick, supposedly. On May 9th, there was a conversation with somebody that's redacted, and a lot of that was redacted. So again, it's probably personal information and unfounded information for it to be redacted to this extent. All right. So on May 13th, there was a statement from Cindy Murray, Maleyha's mother. And it goes on to say that on May 2nd, there was a blank. And the message from Maleyha saying the kids are missing and the police were there. Cindy says she learned from her mother that the kids were missing because she left her phone in the house when she was in the barn, which was why she missed Maleyha's call. She says she did not know what time her mother called to let her know. Goes on to say that they talked to Chance, Daniel's friend Chance, and Daniel called him on Friday night. Sorry about that. Chance said that Daniel called him on Friday night to tell him that the kids were missing and ask if he would help with the search. Chance and Daniel and their friend Adam went out and searched on Saturday. And I think these are the guys who had like a dark colored SUV. You know what I'm saying? I think these were possibly them. They interviewed a neighbor, but the neighbor, his name was Justin. He says he didn't know the kids were missing, and he didn't know who they were. So they ended up doing some ground and search and rescue, GSAR. And this was done May 2nd through the 7th, so 5 days, performing a comprehensive search of the area where Jack and Lily went missing. I don't really think that's a long time, guys, to be honest with you. 5 days, with how dense those woods are, you would need so many volunteers to be able to adequately search it for that amount of time, that amount of space, adequately. Because there are places where you can see them walking, and if there's like a few yards between them, you're missing a lot. And 5 days and that amount of space and stuff, I don't know. It's extremely dense. You know, think about I know Brian Laundrie, his situation had a flood in the middle of it, but they were out there for a few days before, and the waters receded for some time afterwards, and they struggled to find him, and they had a huge search too. Huge search. And they actually, you know, his parents actually told him where he was going to be at, and they ended up, his parents go out there and find him in the exact spot. And so just food for thought. I mean, yeah, I don't think that, and I think that terrain was pretty bad, you know, especially when the water got up a little bit and stuff like that. But you know, these woods out here are pretty dense too, you know. It may not be full of water, but I mean, it seems like there was just more packed in compared to what was out there in the swamp area. There was more open spaces. This seems like super dense. And if you know, for 5 days, I don't know. I don't know if that's enough. Goes on to say Amy Hansen was the search manager for the search of the area where Jack and Lily went missing. Oh, by the way, guys, I have been involved in searches for missing kids. Some that resulted positive, a few that didn't, a few that, you know, we couldn't find somebody for a while. You know, those things, you know, when those things happen, when searches like that happen, we go out there pretty quick. And, you know, we had one situation where, you know, we had a kid who he went missing. We found him, he's probably about 5, 6, found him, about 4 miles away. He had wandered off about a couple blocks, fell into the river and passed and floated a while. And so, you know, not saying that that's what happened here or anything like that. It's just that, you know, bodies can find their ways far, far away in one way or another. And dense of wilderness and stuff like that. It's crazy. All right, so let's continue. The first day of the search focused on what GSR calls hasty searches, meaning they searched linear features like streams, trails, train tracks, and roadsides. They also did some grid searching around the residence where Jack and Lily were seen. That night, mountain bike teams came in to do searches on trail areas. Boot prints were found on a pipeline by GSR Friday night into Saturday morning. There were clumps of them, and they were 2 different sizes. She said they were small in size and corresponded to what children would wear. They focused their search in that area because of the boot prints. They did a grid search in that area of the boot prints and expanded out to the waterways and to that area as well. So it doesn't seem like they really searched everything. It sounds like they were looking at in specific spots, trails, water stuff, and then they would they found the boot prints, and then they focused in the search there. I'm not saying they didn't search a large amount of the area, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a significant amount of area that was not searched. And 100%, they are tiny. They could have been overlooked 100%, especially with this kind of like a hasty search and a fast, quick search and a little grid search here and a grid search there. You know, not try to be a McDonald's song here, but, you know, they didn't do a lot in a bunch of different places. You know, I mean, they focused where the boot prints were, but apparently where the boot prints were, so was some other kids. And so it's unsure if it's actually, you know, those boot prints are related to the, to Jack and Lily, which is unfortunate. It really is, because, you know, had they not taken some kids out there, and I'm not trying to blame anybody, they're trying to just help find the kids. But if there was no kids out there, then it would have been more than likely than not than it would have been, Jack and Lily's. But having kids out there, I would assume they would have asked those kids or figured out who those kids were and figure out their shoe sizes and try to, deduce it from there. But if they ended up wearing a similar size or the same size, you just don't know. You know what I mean? It's a maybe. All right. So let's see. The boot print were found on the pipeline. There were clumps of them. All right. They expanded out to waterways as other well-lit areas. They conducted more searching in the area of the house. They brought in a heavy urban dogs who used air scenting to find people that are alive. And I think that's important because they said that people that were alive, I don't know if these dogs can also detect, dead bodies or not. But these were definitely used for air scenting to find people that are alive. They heard reports of people with kids out searching, so they did not know for sure the boot prints belonged to Lily and Jack. In the area of the search, they checked blinds, tree stands, and other structures that were open. They opened car doors if they were unlocked. They did not enter the houses with those who lived in the area. Goes on to say between the 17th and the 19th, so they did another 2-day search, or 3 days, 17, 18, and 19. They conducted another search from May 17th to the 19th in the area of Jack and Lily's residence. The area they searched had previously done was hasty searches, but a dog, but were not grid searches. They conducted a grid search and overlapped a few areas already searched to ensure they had not missed anything. Nothing was found related to Jack or Lily. They have about 70,000 drone photographs to review. It is something, if something is located on the drone photograph that needs further inspection, they will let the RCMP know. Underwater recovery team search between May 8th and 9th. The RCMP underwater recovery team checked bodies of waters in the area of Jack and Lily's residence. And so they went down to a few different lakes. And they checked all the areas they believed were easily accessible to small children. All right. And then they had a piloted craft. And this is just, all right. So it says at 10:38, they launched a RPAS from the kids' home and began initial searches using both live camera view and thermal imaging of nearby swamp and waterways adjacent to the property. Approximately only 0.5 kilometers north of the residence is how much they were able to cover. That's not a lot. I know a lot of people are like, oh, they brought in this and they brought in that. If the drone footage and the thermal was only able to get out half a kilometer, that's not a lot. The search included a low altitude hover over Lansdowne Lake, performing a 360-degree scan of the lake and the water's edges. The results of the lake search were negative. At 2:07, they brought the RPAS down due to battery depletion. So it wasn't something they could put out there for a very long time, and it died. And so they only got about half a kilometer. So I think people, when they were saying, oh, they did all these searches everywhere, they used thermal and they were all over the place. Yes and no. They did what they could and where they could, but it didn't cover everything. All right, it says here that they did a drone search of underside of Jack and Lily's residence. So they even searched even more. They would go even further into searching the residence, and they did it underneath the residence. It goes on here to say that they were searched a confined space under the trailer where Jack and Lily lived. With RPAS, he arrived at the residence on May 9th, and he was invited into the property by Daniel. So they were invited to the property too by Daniel. A lot of people look at these parents and say, hey, man, they've done, they're suspicious. They've done this, they've done that. They have cooperated. They have given up bank statements. They have given up their phone records. They've given up their locations. They've given up their phones. They've taken polygraph tests, and they've invited investigators to come and do searches into their home. These aren't the things that you normally see happen when you have a parent involved in some sort of nefarious event with their children. It really isn't. You see parents lawyer up. That's one of the first things that'll happen. They'll lawyer up. They'll refuse to give their phone. They'll deny taking a polygraph test. They'll deny, if you look at the JonBenet Ramseys, and I'm not saying that they're guilty or innocent, but they took off and got a lawyer. They were in Georgia for a good while. And so, the Haros, they stopped cooperating, but they're an example because they were cooperating a little bit, and they got all their stories all jacked up. That's what happens when you cooperate and you did something. When you cooperate and you do something, you get caught pretty easily, kind of like the Haros. It's very rare that somebody cooperates to this limit. I think it's almost impossible that somebody cooperates to this level and yet they still aren't arrested. I don't see that happening. Analysis of the boot print located during the search. So this one's interesting because it says here that it was a size like 29, right? Which comes out to a size 11, but Maleyha said that she had bought Lilly wore a size 12 or 13, so they initially didn't think it was the same, but they end up finding like a receipt from a Walmart from May. It says they went to for on March 20th, so it was just a couple of months earlier, and it was Lilly's rain boots, which were size 11. So it could have been the shoes that the footprints that were out there. It says because Lilly's boots was confirmed to be a size 11, it's consistent with the boot print located on the pipeline in the search area near 1407 Gairloch Road. The pink blanket, we'll get to know a little bit about this. So this says here on May 2nd at 4 p.m. is when Haley found the pink blanket. I'm sorry. It says here that Haley, Hayden, and Hayden's girlfriend came out to the woods to say they found a pink blanket in the woods in a tree in Lansdowne Station Road. They showed a picture to Maleyha and Daniel, who confirmed the blanket belonged to Lilly. It goes on to say that the detectives drove Haley, Hayden, and Hayden's girlfriend back to a location where they saw the blanket. They seized the blanket, and then it goes on to say law enforcement and his police dog were called to the area, took photographs of the blanket. He walked for about 1 kilometer in the area with his dog on an adjacent trail. They did not pick up a scent to complete the track. The other part of the blanket was seized from Maleyha and Daniel's house on May 4th at 9 p.m. It was located inside of a trash bag at the end of the driveway. On May 5th, detectives seized the blanket and they compared it with the image of the blanket seized from the residence. She believed the pieces of the same blanket. After the corporal checked it to confirm it was the same blanket, she drove to the location where the blanket was seized. She confirmed it was exactly 1 kilometer from Jack and Lily's residence. And I think that one of the reasons why I think there was some confusion there about the blanket was because Daniel and Maleyha knew that they threw away the blanket. Now there was 2 pieces apparently of blanket. Obviously there was 2, and maybe perhaps even more. I don't know, but it sounds like there was one found in the garbage. So if there was a piece ripped off of this blanket and it was separated into 2 pieces before the disappearance, and maybe perhaps the kids found it outside or whatever the case may have been before they possibly wandered off. I think that makes sense that they would have believed that why would it be the same pink blanket that's theirs if they threw it away? And so, but I don't know for certain. This goes on to say that they reviewed surveillance video, and this is on May 9th. So this is what, a week after the disappearance, that they finally got, the surveillance footage that shows Maleyha entering the Dollarama with the baby. Daniel enter with Jack and Lilly at 2:01. They all exit at 2:25. So, as I was saying earlier, when it came to the statements and things, and we're going to talk about Daniel's statement here in a second, you can tell that they were really pushing at him, and I think that's a lot of the reasons were because a lot of the red flags that everybody was seeing. You know what I'm saying? The police aren't stupid. I don't understand why there's this pre-notion that people think that the police are stupid. They're not. You know, they know. I guess there's this pre-notion that if I don't know. I guess people think they know more than the police that are investigating the case. It's wild. It's beyond me. But they know more and a lot more and a lot earlier than we do. Right? We're finding out this information now. They knew about this then. You know what I'm saying? And so this is when they found out about Daniel and Maleyha and the kids were seen like actually there. So proof of life, 2:25 p.m. May 1st. And so up until this point, all they had was the word of Maleyha and Daniel that the kids were alive up to that point because they didn't go to school. In addition to previous canvass that occurred during the initial days of the investigation, a secondary, more in-depth video canvass began and conducted in the area of the Gairloch Road within 8-kilometer radius from 1407 Gairloch. This canvass started on May 17, 2025. So they began to canvass out and gather more footage and more evidence. And I'm putting it in this order because I wanted you guys to see all of the work that law enforcement did and went through to try to prove that Maleyha and Daniel did something. They pulled their phones, they pulled everything. This wasn't that they're trying to rule them out. You know, they're looking at them as suspects and they're trying to prove they did something, and they're going through every avenue to figure it out, to see if there's something they lied about, to see if there's something they're being dishonest, to see if there's an inconsistency that's a major inconsistency, not an inconsistency of time, because obviously these two people are separated. And it's not like people have their phones, you know, when a situation like this is going on, they're not, okay, it's 10:25 and 34 seconds right now. I'm going to monitor my time second by second so that I can document it later for law enforcement while the kids are missing. That's not how it works, right? And so let's continue. So they did the surveillance, and then they go to they did the time frame of April 27th through May 3rd. So they went back like a few days to make sure to see, one, is there a change in habits? Is there somebody that's driving around in the area, looking around in the area beforehand? So they're really crossing their T's and dotting their I's. All right. Vehicles in those residents were also being logged for later comparison if required. And so that's the other thing too. And this is what I was trying to say when it comes to if somebody committed this crime. Like if somebody, let me rephrase this. If somebody committed a crime against these children, you're looking for somebody who is going to blend in with all of these things, is not going to be weird that his vehicle's being seen for later comparison, whose phone isn't going to be weird being in that area because it's connected to a tower. So you're looking for people that are uncooperative and somebody who maybe perhaps has a criminal record and some other things. Some things that I talked about earlier about a specific person. I haven't named them because I have no proof whatsoever. I just know a few things that are kind of suspicious that they possibly have done. And so, you know, with that being said, that's the kind of person you would have to look for, is they would have to be able to navigate between these defenses. That's why I think it's either somebody that's very close or they possibly just wandered off, you know, at this point. Applications for sealing order to protect information pursuant to, let's see. This matter involves 2 missing minors who are subject of this application and believe it is the best interest of the investigation and the administration of the justice to protect the integrity of an ongoing investigation. There are still investigative avenues remaining within this investigation. and an investigation may progress into a criminal investigation should the elements of a criminal offense be identified. So what that means is that it could go into a criminal investigation if anything criminal would come up, and which also means at this point they don't have anything criminal, like a criminal behavior or criminal incident. Due to this reason alone, I request the application together and the supporting information to be sealed from the public and any persons claiming any interest. There is actually no authority to protect the information within the Missing Persons Act of Nova Scotia. All right. Now let's go back up to the what they said. So now that we kind of get an idea of what it is law enforcement did that day and around that time, now let's go back up to what was said. So right here. So Maleyha provided 4 statements to police. 2 statements were provided on May 2nd, and 1 on May 3rd, and 1 on May 4th. And the following is a summary. She said on the day that Jack and Lilly went missing, she heard them playing in the other room and was going in and out of sleep. Lilly came into her room around blank a couple of times. Again, they weren't sure, and so this is why it's probably redacted, because it's unfounded and unknown. And Daniel was sleeping the whole time and didn't really wake up. She didn't hear them anymore around blank, so she got up and they couldn't find them, so they called 911. The police came and got statements. Everyone was frantically searching for them. Maleyha did not think this would take days. Maleyha discussed what had happened earlier in the week with law enforcement. She says she kept them home on Thursday and Friday from school. Maleyha says she doesn't remember what they did on Wednesday specifically. She gave a detailed description of what happened on Thursday. Maleyha kept Lilly and Jack home from school on Thursday morning because they had a cough. She contacted the school through an app at 6:18 a.m. So she said even here that she reported that both of them were sick and that's why they stayed home from school. And this is on the first statement on May 2nd. So it's pretty consistent. She had blank in Newcastle in the afternoon on Thursday, and she and Daniel went with all the kids. They drove her 2017 white Nissan Pathfinder. And so this is them going. She talks a little bit about their day, on Wednesday and stuff. There's really not much of importance there. And also on Thursdays, because in the evening she was going to go do some cleaning, but she was too tired. The kids were watching a TV show, so she put Lilly and Jack to bed first, then Meadow, then went to bed herself. Maleyha said they were late to getting bed that night and went around 9 p.m. They usually go around 7 p.m. Lilly was wearing a pink sweater and pink pajamas with white shapes and a barb. What was that? Was that my phone? I don't know. That was pretty weird. Something said I don't have an answer for that. Let's see. Lilly was wearing a pink sweater, pink pajamas. Her hair was shoulder length and her backpack was beside her. So I know that that's another point of interest, was the backpack was beside her. She went to bed with the backpack. Kids go to bed with weird things. They do. Jack was wearing black sweatpants and a t-shirt with a diaper, as he was only partially trained. Daniel stayed up. He said he was going to clean the house for her, but it wasn't clean when she got up, so she doesn't know what he did. Normally, he did little projects around the house at night and fixed things. Maleyha says she was not woken up throughout the night, and she does not know when Daniel came to bed. On Friday morning, Maleyha's alarm went off at 6 and another one at 6:15, which is when she used the school app to mark them sick for the day. Now, I believe that she marked them sick because she was tired, and they went to sleep late the night before and she didn't want to get up. That's just my opinion. Because she didn't go check on them to see if they were still sick. You know what I'm saying? Maleyha then went back to sleep. Daniel and Meadow were still sleeping, and there was no other noise in the house. Maleyha heard the kids playing in the bedroom around blank. They woke Meadow up, so she took her into the bed and turned the TV on for them and faded in and out of sleep. The kids were giggling and laughing and talking to each other. The kids were in their room right next to theirs, so they were quite loud. Around blank, she heard silence and told Daniel she didn't hear the kids. They got up together and checked the living room, and outside they started yelling for them. When they didn't hear any answer, she called 911 at 10 a.m. She had to turn off the Wi-Fi to get the bars of cell service and call from one spot in the house where the service was good. Daniel walked around yelling for them to see if he would get a reply, and eventually took her Pathfinder to go out and look for them in the woods. Jenny was also looking out for them. She had the baby, so she could not go out and look. Maleyha said that she did not think the kids had changed their clothes from the night before, and Lily's backpack was gone, so she assumed she had it with her. She described it as a cream-colored backpack with strawberries on it. Lily and Jack's boots were gone. Lily was wearing size 13 rainbow pink boots, and Jack was wearing size 10 blue dinosaurs boots. But that ended up being somewhat mistaken, right? It wasn't really the right size. She was actually wearing 11. But little details like this, that doesn't mean something nefarious happened. It just means that, you know, these guys kind of give you an idea of their state of mind, so to speak, during this time. You know, they're answering questions under duress. You know, you can't expect 100% accuracy in those moments. That's why you ask the questions multiple times and see if there's any like true, inconsistency, like a really big one, or also to kind of narrow things down, to calm them down, so that way you can get the truth out. You know what I'm saying? All right. It goes on to say she also clarified their sleeping arrangements. Meadow, Daniel, and Maleyha shared a room. Lily and Jack also shared a room, but it was divided in two because they would be up all hours of the night. Maleyha said that Lily and Jack did not have a relationship with their biological father, which we already knew. She goes on saying that her and Daniel have been together for 3 years. Daniel worked every Monday at hardwood sawmill. They were having a hard time getting wood in, so he only worked 1 day a week. She said he was an involved parent and would help her, especially when she was overwhelmed. He was not aggressive with the kids, but had a voice they would listen to. There was never any physical discipline. They discussed what happened earlier the day, and a lot of this is redacted. So a lot of this is probably just her thoughts about Daniel and things that probably cannot be proven one way or another, if you want to put it that way. They discussed what happened earlier that day. Maleyha said she went to the police command post to see what was happening firsthand, and blank. She said there's currently a lot of conflict between her and Daniel's side of the family. She provided the following information. Daniel's family wanted her to bring the baby and stay with them, but she thought the correct decision was to stay with her mother. Daniel pulled her aside and tried to convince her to stay, but she told him she was going to go with her mother. So, but here's the thing, like a lot of conflict with Daniel's side of the family between her. This is what you want. This is exactly law enforcement's, dream right there, scenario. She did not know any of the conflicts in the family's lives that would have caused the children to go missing. So even though they're conflicting, she's still not saying that he did something nefarious. Maleyha said that she had not spoken to Daniel since May 3rd. She had blocked him and had not opened his Snapchat messages. In a fifth statement on May 9th, she said the following. She recounted again what happened Thursday night before the kids went missing. And she continued to what happened Friday morning, which is the same account she provided in her previous statements, so not changing anything. In addition to what was already said, she provided the following new information. She said Daniel was looking for the kids. He opened the front door. He put a wrench on top of the door the night before, and it didn't fall down. So Daniel said that must have gone out the back sliding glass door. The door was shut, but the kids would normally leave it open if they went outside because it was so heavy. There were times, though, when it would be closed, when they would close it. So basically saying that they knew that the front door wasn't the avenue. But it's not uncommon for people to remember things a couple of days later or whatever the case may be, and add to the information. It's actually quite common for people to remember things a couple of days later. Like I said, you put somebody on the spot and you ask them a question and you put the lights on in front of them, and in this scenario, they're stressed out by what's going on with their kids. I'm not surprised that there was some information that was maybe forgotten, such as, hey, we knew they didn't go out the front door because of this. Those type of small details get lost in the commotion and the motion of everything that was going on that day. Kids being missing, trying to find them, searching for them, thinking of things that are happening. You can miss and forget some of these small details. She goes on to say, Maleyha said Jack and Lilly did not normally wander on their own. If they did, they would if blank were there, but not by themselves. Probably said Daniel or a family, if family were there, but not by themselves, something of that nature. Maleyha said that she had a conversation with Janie in the yard until the kids were missing. Janie got ready and went out to look for them. She told Maleyha she heard them outside playing and then heard Daniel yelling. Not like back to back, like she heard him playing and then she woke up again later because Daniel was yelling. Maleyha said she did not think that she opened her phone or sent any messages around that time. She did call her mother and her grandmother after she called the police. She said she used Text Plus because it allowed Wi-Fi calling since she since deleted the app because she doesn't need it anymore. She said she did not use it to call 911 because it doesn't let you. Maleyha said during the day, Daniel had erratic behavior towards the police. She thought he was very standoffish, and Daniel thought they weren't doing enough. Maleyha said she was up late Friday night. She put Meadow to bed, but then stayed up. Daniel came in and just went to sleep. She thought he was tired from searching all day. She said she only got a couple of hours of sleep. It was 3 a.m. the last time she checked her phone, and she was up again at 6 a.m. Maleyha went through and showed the detective her banking transactions on Thursday, and they could narrow down the timeline, but she said Daniel used his card for purchases that day as well. They also did a Google Map timeline, which tracked her movements on Thursday. She went to the following places, and it was basically the stuff that she had mentioned before. No indiscrepancies as where she was. And it says they drove from the Dollarama at 2:48, and they drove between 2:52 and 3:11 and arrived home that evening. She got the kids something to eat, and they were watching TV. So pretty much everything she was saying before. She does go on to say that she let the kids go out and play, and when they came in, it was getting dark. She got their teeth brushed, and they wore their clothes to bed because all the clothes were still in bags from when they washed them at the grandmother's house. She hadn't gotten around to putting them away. Lilly and Jack were hyper and excited, but she got them tucked to bed around 10 p.m. Jack had his blanket and his dinosaur, and she shut his door. And Lilly went to bed with her backpack. You know, the backpack might be like Jack's dinosaur type of thing, you know. Maleyha and Meadow went to bed. Once Meadow was asleep, she put her in her crib and went to sleep herself. Maleyha provided more of a background on their living situation. She said they moved to the trailer on Daniel's mother's property, and it's blanked out. Maleyha said Daniel's father owned over 100 acres of land out near Barney's River, which is a wooded lot. And then the rest is blanked out. I wonder if she was saying that because of, I don't know, maybe she thought the kids went that way or something. But it appears that his property was searched. Daniel provided 2 statements to police on May 2nd and May 4th. The following is a summary of what he said. Daniel said Maleyha took the baby, Meadow, and left with her family. She blocked him on all social media and couldn't get in contact with her. So the very first thing that is said about Daniel's statement has to do with the family, or his family, with Meadow and not necessarily his family. I'm talking about like it has to do with his current situation with his daughter and Maleyha. That kind of tells you what's on his mind, you know, and so first things first, he's like, she left him. Daniel said he rarely used to check his phone, but has done so more in the last 3 days since the kids went missing. When asked about Friday morning, Daniel said the following. Daniel said that he was in the bedroom with Maleyha and Meadow, who were in bed with him. Lilly came in a couple of times, but he did not check his phone to see what time. The television was on, and it was daylight outside. Lilly didn't say anything. She would just open the door and look in and then leave again. She did that 2 or 3 times. They used to remind her to not rush into the room because the kids, they wanted to make sure Meadow got good sleep. Sometimes the kids would wake her up. Daniel said he got up and didn't hear the kids. He thought it was only a few minutes since Lilly had last poked her head in the door. He went out and saw saw the back sliding door was closed. The kids didn't usually close it when they went outside, and the boots were gone. Daniel ran around the house looking for them, but they were not there. Maleyha got up when he got up as well, and was looking of the kids. It's weirdly said. Daniel ran outside, but they were not in the yard, and he couldn't see them. He got in the car and drove around, and then he drove around in the woods looking for them. He searched for hours, and he said he did not look at the time and didn't even take his phone during this time. So he took off in a bit of a rush. The kids did not go to school because Maleyha thought Lilly was sick. So this is where Daniel says that only one of them was sick. Goes on to say that they left her grandma. This is what Daniel's saying. So Daniel's saying they left their grandmother's around 9:30 and got home at 10:30, put the kids to bed. Daniel said he thought Maleyha put them to bed. He did not know what they were wearing because they were underneath the covers when he checked in on them. So he says he checked in on them before he went to bed himself. Daniel said he thought he went to bed fairly early that night and didn't wake up until it was light the next morning. He remembered getting an email from that Maleyha had marked the kids absent from school on his phone around 6:18 on Friday. Regarding the family situation, Daniel said they used to live with Maleyha's grandmother but moved. And I think this is one of the things, like I was mentioning earlier, I think that Maleyha was wanting to move back with, maybe with her grandmother or somewhere else. I don't think she was liking the living situation that she had at that time. And I think this plays a big role to it. Goes on to say something redacted. They moved to Daniel's house, and Daniel's mother moved into the camping trailer on the same property. Daniel's uncle and father lived down the road in a good relationship with his family. Daniel said Lilly and Jack were sheltered, but they always watched them outside, including his mother. His mother would always tell them if they didn't have coats or boots on. And Janie would say that she also kept a lot of the time that she was the one that was watching the kids outside. It sounded like these kids got out a lot, that they were out there quite often, maybe even by themselves. Just kind of my perception of this. He said discipline in the house was just talking to the kids and telling them that they could not do things. Daniel said the kids did not listen to Maleyha. They only listened to him. He said they did not physically discipline the kids. Now, when I meant that they got out a lot, I don't think that's necessarily bad, for kids to be outside playing. They're a little young, but, in a fenced yard, you probably want to be out there with them. You know what I'm saying? Even if you have a fenced yard. Oh, it's coming. It's coming there, Andrea. Don't you worry. I believe, and it goes on to say that I believe Daniel was mistaken when he said he went to Truro on Thursday based on Maleyha's statements in the Google timeline. They went to Truro on Wednesday, and she had the blank on Thursday. So this kind of tells you that, I know a lot of people look at what Daniel was saying and try to pick apart everything he says. He was mistaken even on some things that really didn't make any difference, right? This isn't something, whether he went to the Truro on Thursday or on Wednesday, that has nothing to do with the disappearance or something nefarious happening there. And yet he was mistaken. So, for all the keyboard warriors out there that are picking apart everything that he says, he's not perfect, right? And he was mistaken on something that was irrelevant. So that kind of tells you the mindset that he was going into. He's probably very emotional during this time. Daniel provided a third statement to police on May 6. Daniel said when the kids went missing, Maleyha's mother showed up extremely quick, even though she was over an hour away. He wasn't sure when Maleyha called his mother, but said that it may have been a good idea to check her phone to see the time. So he's already throwing things at law enforcement. This was another thing that some folks were saying that, Daniel is saying that he suspects Maleyha to us, but he may not be saying that to law enforcement. Not so quick. That's right there. This is where it's starting, where he's starting to be suspicious of them. This is them turning on each other. This is what you want if you're a police officer. You want them to turn on each other. All right. Daniel said Google Maps would have shown his location, would have his location. And he always kept his location on for Maleyha, so she knew where he was. And she did not, and she did the same for him. That's very provable. And they, in fact, they went through it and they were able to do a timeline based off of this. Based off of this. They shared. He said the second day he had a cell phone service when he was searching. He said his Google would show his locations. He said he used Google Maps to get out of the woods one time, and he sent Maleyha a picture of it, which all those things would have had GPS documents where you take a picture where you're at, where you're located. All those things would have been documented into the, from the phone. Daniel talked about the areas he searched on the first and second day. He said he went into town, got his friends, Adam and Chance, and they helped him with the search on the second day. Daniel said that he thought Lilly and Jack would only come to him because they were attached to him. Daniel said they'd never listened to Maleyha, only to him, which is kind of a weird thing to say. I'll be honest with you. That's a weird thing to say. But, Daniel strikes me as a person sometimes that doesn't explain things well. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that was something, but that does come off weird. Daniel said he was trying to be completely truthful and tell police everything, but it's hard to remember everything exactly as it happened. Daniel said he's having a hard time because his whole family is gone. Now, why would he say that? Why would he say that? And I highlighted this in green. Why would he say something to this nature, or why would this be reported? Now, reading between the lines and understanding what is happening, this is before the video surveillance from Dollarama. So law enforcement had no proof alive, prior to probably when the kids went to school on Monday, right? Because they missed school Tuesday and there was an in-service day on Wednesday, missed school on Thursday. So, law enforcement, to their knowledge on this day, this is again before that surveillance comes out, to them, they're like, no, this is our guy. And so they're probably pushing him. And they're picking up on some of these inconsistent things, and they're pushing him and they're pushing his buttons. And this is him saying, I'm trying to be completely truthful and tell police everything, but it's hard to remember everything exactly as it happened. Now, for him to say to remember everything exactly as it happened tells me that law enforcement were pushing him in this scenario on the inconsistency, on the details. So they were right on it. They were right on it. And they were suspecting him, and they thought it was him at this moment. They were pushing his buttons and they were pushing him in interrogation. Guarantee you this. I haven't asked him about it. I haven't talked to him about it. But I guarantee you that's what it was. You know what? I probably will. I'm going to ask him if they were really harsh on him. It's one thing I haven't asked him yet. I'll ask him that. I don't talk to him very often. Maybe once a blue moon. I talk to actually other people that are, I talk to Janie probably more. And I've talked to maybe 5 to 6 other folks that live in the area that are pretty close. Some of them know each other. Some of them don't. Some of them are close with Maleyha. Some of them are close with Daniel. And so it's from I'm trying to get an idea of who these folks are from multiple different areas. And if you know them too, and legitimately do, or know anything, you can reach out to me. I'll listen to what you have to say. All right. Oh, there he is. What's going on, Daniel? Had a 4-hour interrogation. So I'm assuming then this is probably what that is. They were really harping on you, man. I'm assuming that's what it is. Not extremely nice because I told them everything I could remember. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Like I said, I'm fairly positive they were going in on you on this one. So this goes on to say, when asked in detail about Friday morning, Daniel reiterated that what he said in his earlier statements and provided the following further details. And Lilly was sticking her head in and out of the room. He could hear Jack in the kitchen in the background. He did not see him, but he was usually loud and clumsy, so it was easy to hear him. Then it's another stuff says, this one says personal information. And so some of them say redacted information. This one says personal information. So I just wanted to point that out. It goes on to say they like to eat and snack all the time and sometimes stash away food. Daniel said when he went outside and looked for the kids around the house, he realized, looked for the kids in the house. He realized they weren't there. He went back to his bedroom, got dressed before going outside to look for them. Daniel confirmed the kids could not go out the front door because he had jammed a wrench or a bolt in there to make sure the door didn't open. He does this most nights because there is a bear that used to hang around outside. I found that interesting. That morning, he had to rip the door open to get out, and the metal piece fell on the floor. So he knew there was only one way that he could have gone out that way. He took the car and went around and looked. When he came back, the RCMP were there and told him not to go back into the woods. By that time, his mom was there and Uncle Ron, and he waited with them. So at this point, for them to say, don't go back in the woods, we don't want you searching no more, we don't want you getting involved, we want to talk to you. This is probably when they're pretty suspicious of Daniel. Let's just follow the steps, right? Law enforcement here are probably pretty suspicious of Daniel. And again, this is before the video surveillance came out. So they're probably looking at this guy and saying, all right, kid's been missing since Monday. There's no proof of life. There's none of this. They didn't go to school and now they're missing. And so they're going to look at the parents right away. And so I guarantee you that at this point, they're telling him not to go back into the woods because they're like, we want to keep an eye on you. Again, cops aren't stupid. They see things. They understand the statistics. They know them more than probably you and I when it comes to, the possibility of a parent involvement in a situation. And so, they're looking at it with that lens too. They don't look at people and automatically assume that they didn't do anything. And you go into a situation where everybody did something. It's possible that everybody did something or had something to do with it. That's how you go into it. You want to be suspicious and skeptical of everybody and double check what everybody says. It goes on to say there was a time when he was looking in the woods and he thought he heard a scream that sounded like Jack and Lilly. He stopped and stood for a while, but the helicopter overheard was too loud and didn't hear anything else. At one point on Friday before dark, he took a half an hour video of his phone where he was searching. It was a steep part of the hill, and he does not think Jack and Lilly could have gone that way. He was using the flashlight on his phone to try and see in coverts, but didn't see anything in the water. They talked about what happened on Wednesday and Thursday. Daniel initially said he had the days mixed up, but then confirmed through online banking on his phone that they spent Wednesday in Turu and Maleyha's grandmother and went to run errands, including Maleyha's blank on Thursday. He goes, they talked about his relationship with Maleyha, and he said the following, and this is all redacted. Daniel said he never takes his phone with him when he leaves the house. Daniel said he always takes his phone when he leaves the house, and his timeline will say he was home. Polygraph examination results. On May 12, 2025, Daniel underwent a polygraph examination at the Bible Hill RCMP detachment conducted by Sergeant Rose Berthum. I apologize if I messed that up. The following is a summary of the polygraph examination report. Sergeant Rose said that the analysis of the polygraph tracings associated with Daniel's polygraph examination procedure indicated that he was truthful. And then it says privileged information, and it has 4 questions. Now, I highly doubt that it was only 4 questions that he took. Goes on to say, now this was on May 12th, the same day, but a different detective or a different lie detector, examiner, Sergeant Daw, is who did Maleyha's. Goes on to say Sergeant Daw stated that Maleyha willingly agreed to undergo a polygraph examination in relation to the investigation in an effort to eliminate her as a suspect in causing her children's disappearance and possible murder. Now, first thing we need to look at here. This was an effort to do what? Let me highlight this and make it really big for everybody to see, because I think people are having a little bit of a problem with when people get cleared and what terminology is and what it means to be cleared. This was an effort to eliminate her as a suspect. Okay? So everything that they have done to this point, everything we spoke about, was in first and probably in foremost was they were probably looking at her as a suspect. And then as the bank reports started coming in, as the phone records started coming in, as all these documents and the searches and everything else that they started doing into their background started to come in, and they searched the house and there's no evidence of things, The only thing they had left was the polygraph test. And this was an effort to eliminate her as a suspect. And it says she was found to be truthful when answering the following questions. Now, check this out. There's 4 of them too, just like Daniel's. So this is their report. After everything we've talked about today, all the documents that are all the records that they've turned in, all the bank records, all the phone information, the detailed information from Google, because they had their locations on during those times. Everything in efforts. This was all at this point of the investigation. Jack and Lily's disappearance is not to be criminal in nature, and we do not have reasonable grounds to believe a criminal offense has occurred. Now, I'm sorry if you guys don't understand what that means. But that means that they don't believe that they did anything. They have cleared them. They have eliminated them as suspects. All of this that they have done was in efforts to do so. Now, obviously, something can come up and they can always change it to a different type of investigation, this, that, or a third or another. But based on everything that they have done, they have crossed their T's and dotted their I's. They have done the searches on the house. They went underneath the dang house. They went inside the house. They checked the phones. They took the phones. They checked the messages. They checked the locations. They took their statements, multiple statements. They interrogated them for hours upon hours, and they didn't lawyer up. They didn't say no. They didn't say, I don't want to take a polygraph test. They didn't, do anything. They didn't leave town. Well, maybe one did, but she's still accessible, right? She's not inaccessible. She didn't leave town without nobody knowing where she's at or not being in contact. In fact, she's the one that came back in willing to take the polygraph test. So in the end, this was all an effort to eliminate them as suspects. And after everything was done, after it all was said, the investigator's comment is, at this point of the investigation, there's not to believe that there was anything criminal in nature, and do not have reasonable grounds to believe a criminal offense has occurred. I don't know how much more clear you can get than that. How much more clear can you get than that? That they, I know some people don't want to believe it. Some people have these theories, and in my opinion, there's certain people who don't want to be wrong. Maybe perhaps they pushed a little too far. They said some things that were a little bit ugly and disrespectful that they would have said, man, I'm only saying this because I believe that they're guilty. I would never say this to somebody who really lost their kids. And they can't fathom with the possibility that they may have said some horrible things to some people who actually didn't do anything to their kids. But this entire document that we went over today, was in efforts of what they did to either prove that Maleyha, Daniel had something to do with this, or to prove they didn't. And so, I mean, some people are going to say, well, it doesn't necessarily say they were cleared. It doesn't say the word cleared. I don't know what the hell you call this, that this was all in efforts to eliminate them as suspects. And at the end of it, at the point of the investigation, they do not believe anything to be criminal in nature and have no grounds to believe a criminal offense occurred. Just saying. But, I know there's some keyboard warriors that think they know more. They know more than law enforcement. They know, because this isn't everything, guys. This isn't everything. This is just what they put together for the media. So this isn't everything that they've done. This isn't the actual words that they said. This isn't the documents. This is just bits and pieces of things, and enough to show the media, probably in efforts to calm things down, because they know Maleyha and Daniel didn't do anything. They're aware of it. They probably see all the crap that those guys are going through. Now, there is one weird thing that's on here that we need to discuss. And I wanted to go through everything first before we talked about the weird thing. And I'm doing this because it's and this comes with Janie's statement. So Janie says it goes on to say that she provided 2 statements on the 2nd and on the 5th. And it says here that Janie said that she lived with Jack, that Janie and Lily and Jack and her step-grandchildren lived in the camper in the same property. Said on the Friday of the morning when she got up at 6 a.m., she had tea and cigarettes. Around 7 a.m., she went out and tended to her chickens and let her dog out. She went back inside and played games on her phone. She got a call from her brother, Ron, at 8:48, and they talked about going to town. When she was done talking to him, she went back to bed. Goes on to say, and this is the weird part, it says she originally said she might have learned the children were gone around 8:48 a.m. before she talked to Ron, but later clarified in the timeline in her second statement. And so it says here that she may have known that the kids may have been gone around 8:48, around the time that the phone call came in. But it goes on to say they clarified. So I was like, I looked at it and I was like, all right, that's kind of weird. That's a weird thing. And I was like, how would she have known, right, around that time? But then I got to thinking about it. I was like, what would Janie's involvement been, right? What is Janie's involvement? If something nefarious happened here, what is her involvement? Did she do something nefarious to the kids herself? Unlikely. You know, if she was involved in this, it was to protect Daniel. Now, Daniel was cleared. So what would she be protecting Daniel of now? Right. So I was like, maybe there's another answer. And then he comes out to say it here at the bottom. It says that her brother, Ron, called her again around 10:19 in the morning. And so this is around the time when she heard that something happened. It was around 10 o'clock that morning, right? When she woke up and Maleyha was outside and she just called 911. You know, Ron calls at 10:19. So I think that's where the miscommunication is on that one, because they don't really press her on it. I mean, they talked to her about it. It says her dog started barking, woke her up. She woke up again when she heard Daniel yelling for Jack and Lily. She came outside after waking up. She saw Maleyha standing on a rock pile holding Meadow. And then he goes on to say her brother called her again around 10:19 after all this had occurred. I feel that this is where the mix-up is. I think she was probably telling him, you know, Ron called me, and then he called me again around the time. And that's around the time I had learned just before that, which would have been accurate. She would have learned just before 10:19 that the kids were missing. And so I think there was just a confusion there. It was the day that they went missing. And so I think that's basically all that is. But I wanted to point that out because I'm not the type of person that hides anything. I even told Janie, I was like, hey, if I don't say that this is in there, you know, I get what it is, but if I don't say this is in there and this pops up somewhere, people are going to say that I'm hiding things, and I'm not. I'm not going to do that for you. If I see something that points in your direction, I'm going to point it out. You know, if I see something that points in Daniel's direction, I'm going to point it out. Just haven't seen it. You know, I'm looking for it too. You know, I've had conversations, you know, not extensively, but I have. And so here, that part was in here. It says she originally said she might have learned that the children were gone around 8:48 a.m. before she talked to Ron. And then we find out Ron actually called her again at 10:19. So there's a good possibility that those stories got mixed up. You know, she's saying that she learned about it, you know, brother called at 10:19. You know, she learned about it at 10, so that would have been just beforehand. And brother had called twice. So there you go. To me, if she's involved, if Janie's involved, her involvement is most likely to assist Daniel, right? Because at the end of the day, like Daniel and Maleyha either heard or saw, or Daniel heard and saw, and Maleyha heard Jack and Lily, right? And so they heard him that early that morning. If Janie did something nefarious without the knowledge of Jack and Lily, I mean of Maleyha and Daniel, let's say that they went outside and she goes outside and something happens. Well, then she has an hour, not even, let's put it an hour to dispose of the bodies and hide them, clean up the scene, and make sure law enforcement don't find out. They're going to be there shortly after. It just doesn't make any sense. And so her involvement, if she was involved, had to have been to protect Daniel. And as we just went through this entire exhaustive podcast going about what it is that law enforcement did to either say it was him or to say it wasn't, I strongly suspect that it was a mix-up of these two statements of when her brother called at 10:19 and when her brother called at 8:48. Because at 10:19, she would have just learned that the kids were missing just right before that. And so I think that's where the mix-up is. They did do something. They neglected their children, and now they're missing. I wouldn't say that. That's pretty harsh, to be honest with you. Yes, ma'am. Kids get out, man. You have no idea how many times. And I know people are going to say, oh, you should have been watching, you should have been doing this, should have done that, prevented this, prevented that. But sometimes accidents just do happen. You can't prevent everything. You really can't. It's like, for instance, this the flood that happened out here in Kerrville and stuff. It's a very unfortunate situation, and people are upset and things of that nature. But at the same time, you just can't prevent everything. There's going to be things that happen. Accidents do happen. Kids wander off. It's unfortunate. It's sad. And you try to do everything you can to prevent those things. And sometimes, people have real lives and they're tired and it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse, but, it's a good thing that I never got lost because I used to leave when I was young. Things are different way, then I used to be able to leave like at 7, 8 years old, go to my friend's house 5, 6 blocks away, get on our bikes and ride around for hours upon hours and come back at 9 o'clock at night. Nowadays, if something like that, if I did that, I had my 8-year-old going out on her bike and I wasn't riding my bike 10 feet behind her and something happened to her, I would be like the worst dad of the year and things of that nature. And so I get these kids were a little bit younger and, at the same time, these parents lost their kids. I don't want to be too harsh on them, especially if they didn't do anything, and if they're cleared and law enforcement here is saying there's no criminal act, there's no criminal offense that they have any grounds to believe, and they've done everything to eliminate them as suspects. It should speak volumes. It does to me. All right, guys, if you have any questions, put a couple of stars. I'll answer them. I'm going to try to jump to the bottom. So if you've asked already, ask again. Do me a favor and ask again. We're probably going to do this for the next 10 to 15, or 5 to 10, depending on how many questions you guys have. If you guys don't have very many, then I won't throw them out. I know I saw Daniel in here earlier. Thanks, Daniel, for coming up. I'm not sure who else is in here. I typically tried to stay away from the live chat while I'm trying to present things because I don't want it to distract me from what I'm trying to say or do, because there's many a times, and those that have been watching for a while will know, if I start getting into the live chat, I start getting distracted. But put a couple of questions. Let's see. I asked Daniel. Oh, I thought you were talking to me. I was like, you asked my mom. Anyone who may watch the kids. Got you. And so, yeah, I mean, I just, like I said, I also asked Janie. I asked her about this situation. And first, I said, hey, in the document, it says something about you, maybe perhaps, knowing something at 8:48. And she got mad at me. And she's like, she thought I was listening to somebody. And I was like, no, it's in the documents. And she was like, that's not what I said, and this and that. And she never changed it. I tried to trip her up on it, talk to her a little bit, and never changed, never side from it. I truly believe that it was a confusion on both parts. You have probably somebody who's under a lot of anxiety and stress. Their granddaughter and grandson are missing, and answering questions and probably talking a lot, really quick. And you have an officer who's trying to figure out what's going on. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some mix up there. And it just seems like, the officer puts there at 8:48, but then also at 10:19, she gets a call from her brother. And at that time she had just learned of the disappearance for sure. And so those two stories sound similar. And so it just sounds like a mix up to me. Let's see. Did the school bus drive by that morning? I believe it did. I think that's what it said in there. I'd have to go back. And I have a whole lot more documents. That was just the first 38. And in the first 38 documents, what it was, either proving one way or another whether Maleyha, Daniel, and Janie, or mainly Maleyha and Daniel, if they had some sort of involvement in a disappearance and or a murder. And that was the other thing that was said. It was said disappearance and murder. And so for those that think that Maleyha may have had somebody take the kids or, worked out some sort of deal with CPS, I think so. I've heard that rumor go around. I don't think so. I don't think that's the case, because I think that was what were some of those questions focused in on, was if she knew where the kids were. And I don't understand why people are asking so many questions for like Daniel, like as if he's already talked to the police. Like I see all these questions like Daniel this, Daniel that, Daniel that. And I know it's not towards me, and it's towards Daniel Martell. And I'm just like, I mean, these are the questions he asked police. I mean, we're not, you guys aren't law enforcement investigators to be hounding him like that. He answered those questions to law enforcement. He answered those questions. He turned in his phone. He gave them permission. He allowed them on his property to search above and below, underneath the residence. He allowed them to go through his phone and his bank records and his locations. He took a polygraph test, answered multiple questions of theirs, sat in an interrogation room without lowering up at any point. I mean, it's pretty crazy. So that leaves two options still, list or taken. I still think there's a possibility they wandered off. I think that leads my thought process in this, is that they wandered off into the wilderness, whether it was on purpose, accident, or there was an animal that spooked them, or maybe an animal that attracted them. Maybe they saw a squirrel ran into the woods and they went after it. You know what I mean? Like a squirrel or something, or something small. And so, I mean, there could be so many reasons. They get turned around, they get lost, and they're little kids. You know what I mean? Why doesn't Daniel answer any of our questions? Are you talking about me or Daniel Martell? Daniel Martell doesn't really need to answer anybody's questions, to be honest with you. That's just the honest truth. And I'm not being mean. I'm not trying to be upsetting or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, the dude has taken it on the chin by so many people. I've seen a little bit about what they've done, to his family, the people that have harassed him and said certain things about him, showed up to their house with drones and lights and cameras and stuff like that. And all for what? I mean, you guys are harassing somebody who is missing their stepkids, and in the process lost his girlfriend and at least full-time custody of his kid. He's now going through a custody issue with Maleyha. And again, another thing that you would think that would cause a divide between them, there is a divide between them, and yet they haven't turned on each other to the aspect of something that is provable. Daniel speculates that Maleyha may have taken the kids because of her lack of emotion and things of that nature. And then there's some other things, and I'm not going to deny that, it's some of those things, some dots connect, right? But it's like that game, like Sudoku. And I like to compare investigations like Sudoku. For those that don't play Sudoku, you're left with a series of 9 blocks with 9 rows, horizontals going up and down, and you have to put numbers in, and the numbers have to be 1 through 9 going across, down, and in the box. You can't have 2 2s in a box, 2 2s in the same line horizontal, or 2 2s in the same line vertical. And when you're playing that game, you might be able to get some things that kind of match together, but then in the end, you're stuck. And that's kind of how that is there's some things there that are like, but then in the end, just as much as they did to Daniel, they did to Maleyha. They looked at her phone, her bank records, her everything. They talked to her for multiple hours. You know, she voluntarily did a polygraph test and passed as well. So all those things were still the same. So I don't believe that either parent at this point had something to do with it. Now, if something pops up, you know, I'm open to change my mind. I don't think so at this point. And I don't think that they would have missed something with the amount of cooperation at this point. At least not, I mean, it wouldn't take much, in my opinion, to turn this into a criminal investigation from a missing persons investigation. And yet they haven't found the very small amount of an iota of evidence to believe something criminal happened to turn it into that investigation. It's just kind of weird. How about the reason the family takes polygraph is so that we can get to the truth of where Jack? 100%, Casey. 100%. That's another good reason. That's why like when parents that haven't done anything cooperate to this level, it's so that they can find the truth about what happened. It's not that they're trying to hide. You know, it's crazy. Let's see. And we'll keep it high level, guys. Let's keep it high level and not attack anybody or any other creators either. Could Jack and Lilly have let me see. Daniel, could Jack and Lilly have heard Daniel Maleyha fighting, and they knew they were breaking up, and the kids were so upset they just wanted to get away, and then something nefarious happens? I mean, maybe they heard them arguing and they wanted to get away and they walked away and wandered. I think that would make some sense too. I don't know if, you know, Daniel and Maleyha arguing and then something nefarious happening with them involved in it is going to result with them passing the polygraph test. Multiple, you know, and these are two different persons taking polygraph tests. Both of them are passing it from two different instructors. So it's not like a mechanical issue. I mean, or ineffective, investigator there. It's they made it so that it was unlikely for something to, one of those things to happen. So that unlikely that the machinery isn't working. So for both of them to pass, tells me that nothing nefarious happened, and that one of them would have either failed or at the very least got like an inconclusive. I mean, I don't think, it's one thing to get inconclusive. They passed it. They were truthful. That's difficult, and so I don't know. I wouldn't say many guilty people pass polygraph tests. That's true. That is true. That is true. What's going on, Chloe? Thank you for being here. Thank you, Canadian True Crime Buff. Thank you, Steelers fan. You guys are amazing. All the mods. If I missed you, if I was going through here and you're in here as well. Sirius is in here. What's going on, Sirius? Thank you, mods, for being in here, keeping it clean. I just started looking. So if you're in there earlier and a mod and I didn't catch you, I apologize. Did he say the kind of bear around the house? He did not. Now, I talked to him here recently because I asked him about that whole mom situation and possibly hearing about the kids before at 8:48, right? I wanted to get to the bottom of it. I wanted to ask before I did the show. And he told me in our conversations there, he said, hey, there was no wildlife. All they found was like a coyote or something else. And I was like, yeah, but I mean, you were putting a wrench there for a bear too. So, there had to have been a bear at some point around there. And then I'm not saying that the bear did something, but that would explain like some things, not everything. I mean, you would expect to find certain things. It's an odd situation. It really is. It's an odd thing. It's an odd disappearance. I'll see if I can ask him about what bear that they had around. What would be the likelihood of two children wandering off and no trace be found? Well, there was some trace. There was footsteps. There was a blanket. So there is some trace of it. And it was a lot further than a lot of people thought they would have gotten. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they got even further than we would have thought. And so, but yeah, I get what you're saying. It's just, what trace will we be looking for? You know, a shoe, some clothing, a body, some blood. You know, if there was an animal attack or something like that. I get it, 100%. But animals work quickly too, you know, like little animals. So like if, you know, it'd be, you'd have to find it kind of quick, I think. I mean, it's really, really dense out there. So, I mean, a lot of people told me how dense it was and stuff like that. And you couldn't see very far in front of you. And people with yards in between couldn't see something. I find it highly likely that they could have missed something. And especially since it didn't sound like the searches were that intense. I mean, it sounded like they did a pretty good job with where they were. But I mean, like people were saying, oh, they had a thermo this and that. And they did 8 kilometers. That's not true. It was half a kilometer with the thermo and the drone. Then they did some searches here and there, not everywhere. Kind of wildlife is in the area? That's a good question. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure bears are there. I mean, it looks very bear-like. I mean, real wooded nature looks very bear-like. Why did the dogs not find the children's scent? I don't know. It's a good question. But, you know, I know that there's been situations where dogs don't pick up scents, you know, for one reason or another, or maybe they didn't go in the right direction. They kept going towards the street, right? Checking the street. Maybe they went the other direction. You know, that scent to the street, they often got picked up at the bus up there. So I wouldn't be surprised if that scent that the dog picked up going towards the street was from their times going towards the bus stop. And they may have gone up the other way. And I don't know. I don't know why I wouldn't have picked them up going further back or whatnot. It seems like they was having a hard time picking up scent out there too, where the footsteps were. You know, it seemed like it was only picking up scent here and there, even in the backyard. It picked it up in the driveway, but not where, like, certain other areas. So I don't know. The wildlife in there, that's a good question. What is your opinion on the report that a woman was standing by her car waiting for 2 kids walking towards her on the street the same day the kids going missing? That one was interesting too. You know, that was interesting. It didn't sound like the kids were wearing what Jack and Lily were described to be wearing, though. I think Lily was described wearing like pink and white and cream colored backpack and some other stuff. And it didn't sound like that was the case for what they were wearing. I don't remember what they said Jack was wearing as far as color goes. I think they said black sweatpants or something like that. And I think the lady saw something different. Now, eyewitness testimony isn't the best. It is not the best. It's not the strongest. So there's a good possibility that she was mistaken on the colors of what she saw, including to the car and many other things. But that's something that you definitely want to look into. I agree. Crickets. I'm not sure what you're saying, Christian. What did you say? I guess not everything's coming through. Put a couple stars. Oh, didn't do anything? Yeah. They didn't do anything, that's for sure. I was in the woods, though. It would have been hard to get far. It was hard for trained searchers. I don't disagree with you there, but I mean, there are, and I was looking through Google Maps, there are like paths, and one of them that would have led to where that, I believe where the pipeline was, that somebody could have walked through. It's just that at some point, if they turned off one way or another, and where they turned off one way or the other, is going to be difficult, right? It's not that they would have maybe perhaps walked through the roughest terrain a large amount of distance. They could have walked through an easier terrain for a significant amount of the distance and then turned off somewhere one way or the other for whatever reason. And so, but yeah, it was pretty hard for them. Could they have heard a huge fight between D and M and just wanted to run away? Or could they have innocently wanted to go to school that morning or something nefarious happened? I mean, they could have done that. ran away if they heard the fighting. I think that's possible. If they were fighting, I don't know if that's the case. One interesting aspect of that is that Daniel again was sitting while in the car while Maleyha was at her parents' house doing laundry. So that's not normal-ish, I mean, it's not polite. Let me put it that way. Many factors impact search and rescue dogs. They are not 100% accurate. Yeah, it's true. Who was the babysitter that went to Patty's with them to do laundry? Oh, I don't know. I'd have to go look. I'd have to check that one out. I'm not sure. And I know you speak to Daniel. Why didn't he bring up the neighbor and 2 shirts so early on? I barely started speaking to Daniel. And I don't know. Well, I don't know. I don't know what you're referring to. The 2 shirts, the ones that were missing. I heard from somebody else that those shirts were ended up being found and they weren't even missing or turned over. So it ended up being a nothing burger. But I don't know. I mean, it sounds like a guy who's looking for answers just as much as everybody else. And I think he's thinking if he gets out as much information as he possibly can, that maybe somebody can figure it out. They used thermal drones, but they only went out half a kilometer. Miss 101. Yeah, so they did use the thermo, but it was only a half a kilometer before it died, the searching that it was able to do. Are there still scavenger birds that far north, like buzzard or vultures, as far as bodies? Don't know, but I would think there would be some sort of scavenger bird, most likely. But yeah, the document said that they only got a half kilometer of searching with the thermo and pictures with the drone. So it wasn't a lot, and it died pretty quickly. Why do I think MBM left the property? Maleyha Brooks Murray. I don't know. I think that her parents probably talked her into it. I think she was talking about Daniel, probably not in the most nicest of ways. I think she was trying to leave him, to be honest with you. I don't know her. I've not talked to her. I would love to talk to her and get to know her and know her story. I hate to speculate about why somebody does one thing or another, or why they say something. If I had to take a guess, it would be something to the effect that I think she was not happy about her living conditions, and she was thinking about maybe making a change. And I think she may have been, talking negative about Daniel, whether it be some of it truthful, some of it stretched. I don't know, but may have been talking negative about him leading up to the disappearance. And I think that her family, just kind of hearing, her statements and things beforehand, probably thinking, well, you said these things and now they're missing, so it must be Daniel. And I think that they probably, kind of egged her on to go as much as she did, her input. So I think there's a lot of factors that go involved in it. But I don't know. I'd have to talk with her, and Maleyha, if you want to reach out, my email is drunkturkeyshow@gmail.com. If you guys talk with her, let her know. I don't think she did anything. I'm more than happy to talk with her. All right, 2 more minutes, guys. 2 more minutes. Let's see. No child walks away 8 to 10 in the morning. Oh, man. A lot of kids would. That's unfortunate, though. I mean, go look at what the missing 411. There's a lot of kids that go missing there, and that's a national force across America. Detective Pilatus, I think is his name, Pilatus. He investigates missing persons in national forces. Some of them are kids. Some of them have gone missing and found miles away, a lot further than a lot of people would have thought they would have gone. Did the grandmother pass the polygraph test? She had some sort of medical condition which didn't allow her to take it. But in the end, what would have her involvement have been? And that's one of the questions that I ask. And this is going to be the last one, guys. The one question I ask is, what would grandma's involvement been? Her involvement would have been to protect probably Daniel, right? That's the involvement. And so if Daniel got cleared and he passed, doesn't that kind of like by association there, kind of deducing things that kind of equal to the fact that maybe perhaps she didn't do anything either, right? Because that's the extent of her involvement there would be to protect Daniel or Maleyha. I don't think she would have been the one that committed the crime without Maleyha and Daniel's knowledge so that they could pass and she not. You get what I'm saying? So I think that's the extent of her involvement. One last one. Why do I wear glasses? Is it because the screen glare bother you? It's actually because of the lights. I have some bright lights. You can kind of, I look up, you can kind of see them. I have an eye illness called keratoconus, and basically the cornea in my eye it cones out. It's eventually going to cone out to the point where I go blind, but it makes light pretty bright for me, and it kind of hurts my eyes to look into it. And so I wear the glasses to kind of limit that exposure, so to speak. But all righty, guys, I'll be back on probably tomorrow. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. I'll see you guys then. Peace.